Kevin Scott has played bass with Government Mule, Warren Haynes Band, Colonel Bruce Hampton, John McLaughlin, and Wayne Krantz, just to name a few. This conversation gets into the real stuff and why some musicians still chase transcendence instead of clicks. It is I, the Poptimist, and today we have Kevin Scott. Thank you so much for coming on.
Glad to be here. It's a really cool setup.
Thank you. Yes. Hey, I'm very lucky. Shout out to Kneecat. They're incredible. Let's talk a little bit about how the Government Mule gig happened. How did that happen?
I guess 3 years ago, their last bass player, Jorgen, got COVID. And I get a phone call from Dave Schools, who's the bass player from Widespread Panic, and he said, "Hey, I gave Warren your information. They're in need of someone like in 2 days." And me and Warren have crossed paths a few times over the years. We were on stage together for Hampton 70th, where Hampton Colonel passed, and I was one of the MDs on that. And so over the years, me and Warren have shared the stage, but then when Jorgen got COVID, they needed somebody immediately, and I got offered, and I filled in for a 3-day run. Learned, can you learn 40 songs in 2 days? And I was on the road in their band. I was like, yeah, I'll see you on Tuesday or Monday or whatever.
So what is it like when you get that call and you're like, oh shit, I have to learn 40 songs in 2 days? Are you freaking out internally, or are you like, I got this?
No, I've been playing since I was 10 years old, and I've been playing out since I was 12. And I think there's a level of self-doubt when you get a call for anything. But yeah, when he said the amount of songs there were, it just, you have to say yes and deal with it. That's just kind of the name of the business anyway. Because so when I saw my schedule, I was like, okay, I'm playing with this dude. I was in Colorado playing with this guy I was out on the road with at the time. And I was like, okay, so I have a full day tomorrow in the hotel to start it, and then I have a fly day. So I have 2 days technically to really
20 songs a day.
Yeah.
Start doing the math.
And I refuse to do charts for that because it's a rock gig. So because also too the expectations. Okay, I'm going into the situation where it's very specific style of bass playing and music, and there's a lot of beautiful looseness involved with improvised rock music, So I went in knowing that it wasn't gonna be perfect, but as long as I put my time in, and I was a Mule fan already, so a lot of the tunes I knew from listening to. Now I never learned them, but I was very aware of the material. Now the newer stuff I really wasn't as aware of. So yeah, I showed up, and once I got to the hotel in Nashville, I was a little nervous because okay, I've done this before with artists where they'll stack tunes on me last minute, but this is another kind of a deal.
Yeah, it's a big leagues.
Yeah.
So what was that first rehearsal like? Were you nervous walking in the room, or?
Well, yeah. I only knew Warren, and it's a whole production. There's the crew. And I was like, okay, so I'm playing through Jorgen's rig, which he had these two big kind of almost like Marshall clone amps, if I remember correctly. So they weren't even bass amps, and all I had was my P bass, which so I had to play some of Jorgen's basses, like the Thunderbirds and stuff like that. So yeah, when I walked in, I was like, okay, well, we're about to start, but this was the brilliant thing with Warren. Is the first thing we played was Warren's like, let's just jam. And that got then all that ass sniffing was over,
Totally.
And I think that's what a lot of people kind of don't. I think musicians get in their own head, especially as leaders, and the whole idea is make everybody comfortable. So then if something goes wrong, you can tell them instead of setting them up for no success. Where it's like, okay, we're playing the hardest song on the list. You know that one? You're like, and the vibe's already done, Or Warren was like, because he's a beyond a pro. He's like, what? Let's just jam in G or something. Okay. Oh shit, this has good chemistry. Now let's go into it.
Yeah, kind of loosen it up, knock the rust off.
Yeah. You know, because again, it was like Matt and Danny, other guys in the band, and more. They knew me from just all my fusion and jazz stuff I was doing, really, and my association with Colonel Bruce, being a girls band. But they didn't. They didn't really know my entire career. They just knew I was in all these fusion bands.
And that you could play.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, I think it's funny because reputation is really your most important calling card.
Oh my God, that's all you got
as a musician. And it doesn't matter what level you are at. You can fuck yourself at the smallest, most minuscule level, and it can come back to haunt you 10 years later.
Oh, for your whole life, your whole career, Yeah, and that's a great point that people don't really talk about a lot. Is it's like no one expects anybody to be perfect, but if you have a terrible attitude, and you do things based on your ego, then why would you? I mean, it's like the Colonel Bruce saying, "Take what you do seriously, not yourself." It's really that's the key, because no one wants to be around people that are like, "I'm a very serious musician, and you're lower than I am," and all this crap. It's like no, it's like, a lot of people shoot them. Well, in this business, when you see people who have this tribe where they're doing great things, and then they slowly descend into, the hell. Most of the time, it's because of their attitude, and it's because why would you deal? Everybody can play, so why would you deal with somebody that's like a prima donna or just a bad person in general?
It's crazy to think about because I moved to Nashville when I was 23, so I was very young when I moved here, and right away, it's like you either inherently know the rules or you learn them quickly.
Sure.
Because so much of my journey in Nashville has just been working with people and me being easy to work with and not a headache on a gig.
I can see that. I just met you 10 minutes ago.
Yeah. But I feel like that's the thing is like, don't be a problem.
Yeah.
Don't be like, you never want to be the guy. Is he going to be ready? You know what I mean? Because you maybe can have one of those and then you stop getting calls because word gets out.
Yeah. And it's also, be a problem when you need to be.
Talk a little bit about that. Expand upon that thought.
Because I think there's certain levels of abuse that inherently musicians take because they think it's part of it from band leaders or management, and there's certain ways of quote unquote playing the game, but you shouldn't. I don't think you should ever be put in a position where you feel uncomfortable standing up for yourself for some kind of injustice of what's happening on the road or for a session. Because that's one of the things the older cats have always preached about is make sure you're taken care of the way you should be taken care of. And I think we're getting this era now that artists and managements are taking advantage of a lot of touring musicians, in particular.
I hear a lot about it here in town.
Yeah, I mean
they're like the mid-level country act.
Yeah, even the bigger acts, to be honest. I mean, I know too much, but when I hear some of my friends who are out with some of the biggest people you would not believe that they're so huge and what they're making, you're like, what is going on here? And so that's the big thing is, when I go out and work, okay. So like, luckily for me, like what I've currently done in my career in terms of side banding is I'm still in bands. Like I'm in Government Mule, I'm in Warren Haynes' band. Like this isn't a side band gig. I'm in the band, so I have equal say in writing and ideas, right? But I still do this because if there's certain things I don't agree with, I say it. Now so I don't need to be scared to do that. Now, mind you, you can't be like, if you walk into a situation, like you said, a mid-level gig or a lower-level gig, which we're all going to do the rest of our lives.
Totally.
That's the spectrum. You know,
Absolutely.
I mean, I've literally done. I've been on the road in Europe and Asia for months, and come home and play a cover gig in Birmingham, Alabama, Industry with my friend Billy Gant. You know, that's just I love playing music.
100%.
You know, but if you assess the situation and you're on a van tour, and you have all these demands that are out of reach, that's not cool. You get what I'm saying? But if you're out touring the world stadiums and it's sold out shows and people, billions of dollars are getting passed around and they don't let you get your seltzers in the green room, there's a problem. You should speak up for yourself.
Well, I feel like, too, in conflict, and it's not just like this in music, there's a way to express things in such a way to resolve the issue.
Exactly.
And I think when I was younger, personally, I would take the approach of a hammer.
Sure.
I would go in there and just be like, this is how it's going to be.
Yeah.
And what I've found through experience is rarely is that the right move.
Yeah, that's the last resort. Now, what I personally, I highly recommend any young musicians watching this, even if you are a sideman, is getting management for yourself, representation. You say, what does that mean? It means like it's having somebody that can do all that talking for you.
Because musicians aren't inherently good, I think, at doing that.
No, and I'm a weird hybrid. Like I've always been good at booking, and I have a company called that I've owned for years. It's a production where we book gigs and more corporate stuff. But for the most part, it's hard not to be passive aggressive. Especially when you don't know how to deal with people. And I'm in a position now. I'm 41, but a lot of younger bass players in town and around the country and even around the world will send me DMs asking me questions about dealing with management or pay and all this kind of stuff, and I gladly will talk to them. But I highly recommend, even if your manager is your high school best buddy that is your manager that does negotiate, it's still a lot easier than you doing it. Now mind you, like if a buddy or a homie that you play with all the time calls you for a gig, I'm not sending my guy Matt Wilson or Steve Lopez or these guys to go talk to them. But for certain things that's important, then yeah, they're going to talk
to have that extra layer there.
Yeah. Because there's a lot. Because the artists, it's like the same thing as like, booking gigs like a tour. If you're not going through the agency and you're booking them yourself, venues for some reason just don't take it as seriously as their agents. Could be the same exact conversation, note for note.
Yeah. Well, I mean, things have really changed too a lot post-COVID. I mean, you're seeing a lot of these artists, perhaps they're booking rooms that are too big for them. I think that's part of it, honestly. But the other part of it, dude, gas prices are fucking expensive. And guess what? There has to be, especially on bigger tours, there's a fleet of people that have to move stuff from point A to point B. And those people also have to be fed. And gas prices have basically doubled.
That's why a lot of the tours are getting botched, I mean, with Mule, we have 2 buses, 2 or 3 trucks out, and
that's a smaller setup for like a bigger band.
Yeah, that's about as small as, and we go out with Warren Haynes' band, we have 1 bus with crew, so, that's kind of an ideal situation. They figured, because the Mule's been around for so long, they figured out what works, where everybody gets what they need, and that's basically what I'm saying is, there has to be one of these days where it's management and the agencies and all these people that are involved don't, it's like there has to be, it swings back to the artist getting it more in their favor again.
Well,
That's ever happened, right?
my whole thing too, especially now in the era that we're in, we have the power of the internet.
Yeah.
But it's a double-edged sword
Mm-hmm.
because you have to figure out how to reach people through that and still maintain your artistic merit as you see fit.
That's right.
I honestly, I think we're living in the best, most amazing time for music. Like, there's so many musicians who cry that it's not 1976 anymore. I think it's a good thing that it's not 1976 anymore.
Well, yeah. There's a pros and cons of all of it.
Totally.
You know, I mostly cry about it's not 1976 with the gear.
Totally.
You know, or 73 really, but yeah, I mean, here's, you know, the thing is, there's a lot more self-reliance on putting your own stamp on things that you don't necessarily have, you know, people breathing down your neck. But at the same time, you know, when you get, like, well, eventually, if you get to a point where you're like, you went viral and you know, you have a certain sound and you have to go to the next step of whatever that may be, which is a higher agency or a higher label or both. What I've seen with a particular friend of mine over the past few years, you know, I've known this person for a very long time, and I've seen his career, essentially him getting pushed more and more outside of who he is. And it's just interesting to see how the label and the management treat this person, knowing that he's this, and keep trying to force him through other,
Water him down.
yeah. And it's just like, he's one of the few people that doesn't need any of that. He's so talented. So it's just, yeah. So like you said, I personally, there's so much amazing music out.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the boomers don't know what the fuck they're talking about.
Hey, man.
They, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, they'll tell you, oh, we had, like, sorry, but, like, the amount of amazing music happening in art is tremendously.
And we have it in our pockets.
Yeah.
At all times. Did you listen to the new Sturgill Simpson record, Johnny?
I bought it for my wife, yeah.
The music is fantastic, but his whole marketing behind that was fucking genius.
Yeah, it worked.
It worked beautifully.
Yep.
He got to number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100 with a physical release.
Yep.
That is unfucking heard of.
Well, and I think what we're talking about, because, you know, we're pretty eccentric people, is, you know, and this has been the case since the beginning, is like longevity of music is essentially being honest. And, you know, but the mass majority of public, you know, Sonny Rollins just passed away.
R.I.P.
You know, you can't, I mean, most Swifties aren't going to tell you I'm a huge Sonny Rollins fan. But Sonny had an amazing career where he lived comfortably and could continue to do his art. And I think as musicians and artists, that's really the dream. You know, like if you told me, hey, man, here's the deal. We're going to cap you out at, we're going to pay you $125,000 a year for the rest of your life, but you can do anything you want artistically, I would take that in a heartbeat. You know? And I think that's where the problem lies. It's like, what are you really seeking as a musician? To me, that's like the ideal setup where you have a career playing anything you want to play with the people you want to play with, and you're capping out at, you know, 700 to 1,500, 2,000 seaters, and then you go play Europe. I mean, it's like, that's pretty sick. Production's low. You put your own stuff out. You know, I mean, a guy like Sturgill, it's like, that's what I'm getting at is his fans are huge music listeners.
100%.
So, of course, it's like, hey, you know, he could have said, well, I'm putting out vinyls in a sewer on Thursday.
I would have gone to buy it.
We all would have been there.
Yeah.
Because he's an artist.
Totally.
Comparatively speaking, more mainstream, you know, entertainers, that they're relying on all the tricks to get the money to come in, and it's not longevity.
Well, he memed that album, I feel like, into success.
Yep.
The music is fucking good.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this might be my favorite Sturgill album that he's done in his career, and I've been following him since the beginning, even since before I moved to Nashville.
Right.
And to just kind of see how he's transitioned and how he's grown has been amazing as a fan. And the record sounds like they were road hot. It sounds like they just got off tour.
Yeah. Well, they're, it's funny. I'm friends with Kevin and that whole crew. Kevin Black's the bass player. I just played a gig with Lar, the guitar player at the Underdog for the guitar festival. But Sterl's doing a 3-hour gigs. Which in my world is normal in the jam band world.
Yeah.
But you're 100% correct. That record, you can tell they've been playing together. And there you're going back to the old school. Where the reason why these old records sounded like that, because those guys played nonstop.
Yep.
And we're kind of losing it. I have friends who have some pretty good touring gigs around Nashville, and they do 45 to an hour every night or whatever. And I knew them when they were playing 4-hour bar gigs with me, and they're getting soft. When I book them, but.
Well, it's a different world too. Even Broadway playing. Have you done any Broadway gigs before?
I haven't.
It's its own thing.
I've taught some guys who play there all the time, so I get the info with Skibby.
Yeah. I mean, you're gonna get your ass kicked.
Yeah,
like that's just part of it. But I think once I kind of accepted that I could put myself potentially in embarrassing situations, I started playing a lot better.
Of course. That's the thing. Like, I seriously don't care if I mess up at all. It's going to happen. It happens to everybody. I mean, when I was on tour with John McLaughlin, it was a 6-week tour, and I think it was in Cincinnati. We're playing Birds of Fire, and, it's at 15, and the blowing section, I just played an ostinato for the most part because, it's 2 drums and all this crazy stuff's happening. And we lost the one. Or, I was still playing the same thing, so I didn't lose the one. But it happened. It was a train wreck moment, and it's, 5,000 people, and everybody's looking around, and John looks at me, and I start a new one. Everybody's looking at me. I was like, no, this is the new one.
We're going to get back to the center of gravity here.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's going to happen. It's like if you're really playing, like, obviously there's positions of, like, different gigs where the whole idea is to repeat the same thing every night, and that's its own mental workout of we're playing the exact same way, the same set every night. But when you don't do that, that's where the real money comes in, where you're going for stuff that it might not happen. And I think people are getting more aware that that's cool again. Especially as bass players, I tell people all the time, like, you have to be the most dangerous person in the band. That's the only way it works.
Expand on that a little bit.
I mean, it's you have to. I'd rather go for something and not land it than just not go for it. And that's dangerous because we're kind of the only position. I tell people too. It's like the whole music ensemble. Bass players, we're essentially the drivers, the captains, the pilots of the vessel, and the drummer is the vessel, the physical vessel, the car, or whatever. And everybody sits next to us. The guitar player might be in the passenger seat, the percussionist, the vocalist, or whatever. They're all riding and we're steering it. And that leaves a lot of responsibility, but it also leaves us we're setting the vibe of the gig. And Anthony, I could talk about Anthony Jackson for 5 hours, but he was a lethally dangerous bass player.
So for people who don't know, what has Anthony Jackson played on? Like, what does his resume have?
I mean, everything from his biggest claim to fame was Love of Money for the OJs. Money, money, money. That was him. I mean, thousands upon thousands of records. All of Shaka Khan's great stuff he played bass on. In the jazz world, Michelle Camilo, Steve Gadd's stuff. He did stuff for Paul Simon, Steely Dan.
Love Steely Dan.
I mean, it's just he was like, in my opinion, probably the ultimate GOAT of anybody, because he's from the old school. You know, he's second generation electric. You know, he's right after Jamerson, but he was such a Jamerson freak. He took that, expanded upon himself with classical music and all this other stuff. He was a genius. But his sense of playing was so dangerous. You know, he would play these insanely beautiful runs that were in the perfect place. And, you know, same thing with Chuck Rainey. I mean, Chuck is a very dangerous bass player. The stuff he would play, you're like, what was that? Comparatively speaking, that was perfect. You know, okay. You know, so that's what I mean. I think that if we took a list of 20 guys that we named off, I guarantee all of them are pretty dangerous players. You know.
Absolutely. Well, you have the biggest chance for embarrassment as a bass player too.
Yeah. So why not go for it?
Yeah.
You know, it's like being a comedian. If you don't, it's like, I mean, that's the comedian world and the musician world is very similar. And when I lived in New York, I had the pleasure of seeing some of these great guys do these secret sets to try out new material, and seeing a guy like Bill Burr in the small club in Manhattan in the basement and try fire out material, some of it not work. It's inspirational if you're professional, because you're like, okay, it's the same thing if you go see a show with some of your favorite guys and there's a moment of like a train wreck or something. It's the human aspect of it, you know, and that's just as inspiring as seeing a perfect show.
Yeah, well, you almost want those moments, and I think now too, especially with the direction that we're headed in with AI, which is a whole other topic.
Yeah.
I just really value. I mean, think about all of the great Zeppelin records. Jimmy Page talked about it. He's like, we leave the mistakes in.
Always.
Gives it flavor, seasoning. It's like having a cast iron skillet.
That's right. And look at, all the jazz records, you know, like, come on, you know, I mean, with Tommy Flanagan played on Giant Steps, right, the piano player, I think, and it's a legendary story because, you know, he supposedly tanked that solo on piano. Could you imagine you show up to the session with Train, I got this exercise, but we're making a song out of Giant Steps, and you have to solo over this, you know?
Yeah. It's crazy fucking changes.
And then he redid it and showed he could play through it. But they kept that take because that was probably Coltrane's favorite take. You know.
Well, it's the first impulse. I think you like.
It's the ensemble idea. Like there's been plenty of recordings I'm on where like that wasn't my best take, but the overall big picture was the best. So let's keep it.
The way that I always compare being a bass player is like being an offensive lineman on a football team.
Dude, defense. That's literally like that's my analogy.
Yeah,
like, that's it.
It's not glamorous, but it's necessary for the job to get done.
Oh, you're blocking, man.
Yeah,
yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I would say it's defense because sometimes you get a fumble and get a touchdown.
Yeah.
Sometimes, you know,
totally.
But we're protecting the quarterback for sure.
Yeah,
you know? It's
taking the hits,
and then but that's a cool part of the job too. You know, I mean, is that and at the end of the night, sometimes your back hurts from carrying everybody all night. But it's a pain you gotta go through. You know, I mean, it's but yeah.
When you were younger, like a musician coming up, I feel like stories like this are so necessary. Did you ever have your ass just really handed to you where you're like, I have to change?
Oh, it just happened. Yeah, it just happened at Jazz Fest. I mean, it happens all the time. I mean, I grew up in Southeast Alabama, third generation musician. My dad, my stepdad, David Atkins, he was very seasoned toward the world session guy that, and I grew up in Dothan, Alabama. But there were some amazing players there that would tell me, like, hey, don't do that. Or, I remember one time when I was younger, I was about 14 playing with my dad. I was real big into, that was my slapping era, for a long time. And I would just shred. He was like, just quit with the parlor tricks and play the blues for this one. I mean,
Focus on the groove.
focus on the instrument, you're playing. So, I mean, great advice from him. I was Grant Green Jr. was a mentor. He helped me a lot through stuff. Bernard Purdy was a mentor when I was younger. Russell Gunn, incredible trumpet player, composer. I was in his band for most of my 20s, and he would just flat out lay it on you, what's happening. I mean, I got more stories than I don't of getting handed my ass handed to me. I mean, recently at Jazz Fest, I do a marathon every time I go down there for New Orleans. I live in New Orleans for a little bit, but so I'm doing 12 gigs in 3 days or some crazy shit. And one of the gigs was with my buddy Roosevelt Collier, and Roosevelt's an incredible pedal steel and lap steel player from Florida. We've been really tight for a long time now. He's the musical director for Jelly Roll. He's doing really well. But he put together this really cool band. It was me and Taz on guitar, and it was Alvin Ford on drums, incredible drummer, and he had Weedy's like this incredible, like he's a percussionist, but primarily on the djembe. But this whole gig was, and and I've always looked up to Weedy for years because, that it's what he embodies is an entire continent. It's just the origins of music. African drumming,
primal.
Yeah, and when I lived in New Orleans, he was cutting his record at the studio where me and my wife lived at. So I would sneak down there and see what they're doing, and Weedy called me on a few sessions, and I lived there. But this particular night was an improv gig, and Roosevelt would basically point to somebody to start something. And when he pointed to Weedy, he started stuff, and him and Alvin got into some things. I was like, man, I had the one turnaround, so I'm just gonna go for it. And then I got corrected, and I figured it out. But that's just the name of the game. I mean, I'm a forever student, and it's always a great feeling to get humbled. Because if you're not, then I mean, what are you doing?
Yeah, if you're not doing it for the love of the game, then you shouldn't be. Because it's fucking hard, dude. I was thinking about this morning. It's mostly a mental game.
Yeah.
Like, yes, playing is fun, but it's almost secondary. You have to have a really strong, resilient mindset because you're going to get your dick kicked in multiple ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's also, I'm such a nerd for music personally. It was like I love and respect so many genres, and I think that because of that, my study of just complete different eras of music and players. I think what I'm saying is the key is to study something and move on, and not be scared to move on, and go to the next thing. Because I was talking about this to a friend of mine on the way here on the phone, and he was talking about the jazz scenes, and I live in New York, and when I once I got to a certain point with that music when I was in my early 20s, I had so much respect for it, but I just couldn't sit around and just learn a certain vocabulary and only do that and dedicate myself to being essentially a historian of that. Because I mean, once I started really becoming on my own in my mid-20s. I have my own thought process behind things more than I ever have. It was about 23. And I realized, man, I'm actually more influenced by my origins of playing bass was R&B music because of my parents. So I started playing bass. I heard Duck Dunn on Green Onions on the Sandlot, and then from there I discovered Archie Bell, and I discovered Otis Redding and anything that was on Atlantic, which was essentially Stax Records. And Stevie Wonder, and so my origins of playing bass was R&B. So it was Tommy Cogbill, Duck Dunn, Stevie, the band Stuff, so Gordon, Edwards, and And I went into my metal phase, like we all do. I still listen to the majority of that in my own time. But my point is, jazz. My first introduction to jazz was later things, because my grandmother listened to a lot of jazz, like big band and Sinatra and Oscar Peterson. That was her favorite piano player. So Ray Brown and all that stuff was in my DNA as well. But I was more drawn to for instance, the first Coltrane album I ever heard was Sonship, I think, which is, his later stuff. And when I started getting into the idea, okay, dude, you got to start learning standards, and you got to memorize them in all 12 keys and figure out all the stuff. I was doing that around Atlanta, and then eventually I came to a wall with it, and I realized, man, I'm more influenced by this. I need to concentrate on what I really like doing. It doesn't mean I don't respect it or love playing it, but I realized I'm more attracted to improvising, which is a universal trait. It's not just jazz; it's every genre. So
Yeah, it's just on steroids in jazz.
right.
Well, it's the thing that I like about jazz and being a jazz-based player is you are doing algebra in real time.
Mm-hmm.
It's fretboard algebra.
Sure.
Trying to figure out, okay, I'm here. How do I get? I'm on this this E flat. How do I get to G?
Right.
It's a weird change.
Yeah, and all you have to do is just go down tritones in half steps, and you'll eventually get there. That's another thing is transcribing. I never was a big full transcriber. I still don't really believe in the idea of sitting down and learning an entire solo. I think it can almost affect you negatively in a way. Now, picking and choosing moments,
Get the vocabulary down.
Yeah, I've spent. God, the amount of time I've spent with Jamerson and Chuck and Anthony and Paul Jackson and all these guys. It's years and years of just completely getting under them, But the only way you have time to do that is by picking and choosing. Okay, this part Anthony played on this song, I'm gonna learn that and apply it. Compared to saying, you have to transcribe 10 of his songs today, because a lot of the times when you see this happen is with the internet, you see someone post this great transcription and they sound great, and you go see a video of them actually playing in real time, and it's not so good. That's not every time, but it happens.
What do you think that is?
Well, it's just it's putting more emphasis on not applying it. You don't have to. You could be some of the best musicians who have ever lived didn't transcribe anything at all their entire life. So you have to choose what path works best for finding your own individual sound, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, it's the more experience you get, the more you develop your style, so to speak, your flavor.
Yeah.
And I think it's funny, listening to you talk about the internet thing. There are players that are monster players that you see them shredding on guitar, bass, whatever, to a backing track.
Yeah.
Drop them in a full band setting and see how it goes. Can they replicate that?
Most of the time they can't. And that's what you're and I realized as a kid, this is funny. When I was, your ego is on fire, and it's the name of the game. You have to lose all that eventually. But the guys I didn't appreciate because they weren't chops guys when I was maybe 16. That didn't sound impressive. Well, the reason why these cats are getting our first call guys is because of one thing, and that's experience. Because when they're younger, there's a certain energy of okay, I'm going to hire this guy because he's coming up, and he's going to do some fresh stuff, probably. But then the seasoning comes in, and you hit this perfect kind of middle ground where you're you always want to stay dangerous, but also get the seasoning, is what I'm saying. Because now it's I can appreciate, I'm getting more closer and closer, I hope, to being 12 years old again when everything sounds good, where I'm turning off the fucking musician bullshit, where I'm you're objectively enjoying something instead of analyzing it,
Totally.
And with bass, it's such an interesting thought process because, it's some of the most genius things I've ever heard now are just like, oh, that's so cool that he decided to play a whole note there. Because you have to put the perspective of being on the session. That's where the genius shit comes in. It's like, what would I do here? You know. But then it's also, you have to be given the opportunity to be in that situation, and that comes from who you are and showing up and not
being reliable
and not getting dark.
What do you mean by getting dark?
Because people, you know, I seriously don't have expectations. And if I do, I'd cancel them. You know, that was years ago, studying, you know, all these different philosophies, and you know, J. Krishnamurti, he blew my mind when I was younger with a book called Freedom from the Known, and it's really eliminating any kind of expectations of anything. You know, it's like, and just doing it because you have to do it or you enjoy doing it, and not having an idea of like, this will lead to something. You know, because the thing is, it never fully gets to where you think it is anyway. You know, I personally, when I start getting calls for these real heavy fusion guys, like the heaviest people on the planet, like I couldn't believe I was getting called by them. I was playing in like I was doing soul sessions and playing, wearing suits and playing in like a touring soul original band called Ruby Bell and the Soulphonics. And all of a sudden I started getting pushed more into this direction. I was like, okay, I'm gonna go for it. You know, I mean, if you asked me when I was 16 if I'd be playing in Mob Vishnu, I would have said, no, I'm gonna play this, you know. But you eventually just go where you get called, and you know, and it's, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally.
And I know a lot of guys that they have all these expectations. They think they're good, and you know, pour me in, pour this and these things. It's like, no, man. Like the success to me is playing with my friends all the time. That's why, you know, one of the reasons why we moved to Nashville, my wife and I, was because, you know, for me, it was like my best friends live here who I played music with for 20 years. You know, that's success to me, is you play with your best buddies and you write music and you play music. And it's like, how you do that is up to you. Like, you know, I tell people who, you know, because I teach a lot, and when people get dark, well, I have a day gig. I'm like, well, you're just as valid as anybody. You know, as long as you're playing what you want to play. Now, if you have a day gig and you're playing shit you hate, then you gotta rethink it. You know, but you know, I just don't. We have to. It's when that stuff happens, I kind of check people now, and I'll just be like, oh, poor you. You get to hang out with your friends and play music all night, and then go on the road, and because you know, there is essentially going to be all sorts of different obstacles with anything you do, and touring is not easy, you know, and you know, and you could sit there on paper and go, well, Kevin, you have all your meals taken care of every day, you know, you're on a bus, you know, you're told what to do, but then the obstacle is like, you know, when you get back from that, there is a level of depression when you get home, because you're having to get back into the real world, you know. And a lot of people don't really talk about that, but you know, touring is a mental strain, and it gets more straining the bigger the gig is, because you know, when you're in a van with your buddies, you're riding, you're stopping when you feel like you're smoking cigarettes and you feel like it, you're like pirates out there together, you know. But when you get into a situation with buses, you know, now
got bus call.
You got bus call. You got to make sure this happens. You got to make sure you're here for this. You know, it's like it does start getting pretty crazy out there. You know, because you're essentially living this life of like, I don't have to think about much besides just playing this gig. Everything else is taken care of. So when you get home, I got a litter box. I got dishes to, you know, it's like you're back into reality, essentially. And there has to be a study on post-tour depression, because it happens to everybody, you know. It has to, you know.
So what do you do when you get off off the road? Like, are you just like laying around for a little while?
Yeah,
Or are you
it's
like,
not. It's not possible for me to do that. You know, I just keep going. You know, even though I should probably take a day or two off, but a lot of times, hey, can you come do this gig the day you get back? It's like, well, I won't do that necessarily. This is something cool,
yeah,
but you know, but I have been. You know, the older I get, the more I can see. You know, I mean, again, I'm not an old man, but the guys I go on the road with in their 70s or close to it. You know, and they get back and they chill. You know, well, I'm not quite there yet. I still, you know, when I get home, I'm like right back in it.
time to get to work.
Yeah.
How did you link up with Colonel Bruce?
Man, linking with him is, he kind of finds you in a weird way. You know, I got introduced to his scene randomly at a flea market where I grew up. I was buying vinyl at the time, and I was in high school. And this guy, I swear, he was like a Looney Tunes cartoon character. He was about 4'9". He had a mustache that went down to here, wore a cowboy hat. He was like Yosemite Sam, basically. And I got every record in the world on Warehouse, got millions of them. Just give me a list and I'll bring them to you. And to this day, we just called him Stash. Didn't know what his name was. And at the time, I was getting into like Train, Albert Eiler, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so I gave him a list of records. He didn't have all of them, but he gave me a Zappa record and Lonnie Liston Smith. What Coltrane? It had been Sunship, actually. And then this record called Session 2. And one other one. No, Creator Has a Master Plan, Pharaoh Saunders. And then he randomly gave me this record that had these two guys on it. One had like a powdered wig, like he looked supposed to look old. A guy in a beetle jacket with sunglasses and a beard. And it was called Colonel Bruce Hampton in the Late Bronze Age. And I put it on and it blew my mind. I was like, looking in the back of it, and it had Atlanta, Georgia. And I only knew about Atlanta because my mom lived there for a while, and my dad lived there, my uncle lived there one time as musicians and blah, blah, blah in the 70s. When I heard that, I totally became possessed by where the Zambi spirit is, essentially. And that was the first obsession where I was like, I got to play with Colonel Bruce, I have to play with Sean Lane. It has to happen. And then Sean passed away, so I never got the chance to meet him. He was a genius. But the Bruce thing, I eventually got called to go play at a band from Atlanta, and my parents were like, "You gotta get a gig or go to school." You know, like you can't stick around Dothan. I was like, I don't want to stick around Dothan.
So they were kind of pushing you out of the nest.
Yeah, and because I had I was playing 3 nights a week in high school or 4 nights a week, and I had a t-shirt printing job as part time, and this band hit me up. Hey man, our bass player quit. Come join. And I was like, fuck it, I'll go to Atlanta. I was 19. But we opened for Bruce one of those shows in Albany, Georgia, with the original Code Talkers with Tyler, Ted, and Bobby. And then I was like, holy shit, there he is. And then I quit that band and was starting my Atlanta journey. And I ran the Colonel again at the Whole Foods in Buckhead with my buddy Tony Stafiro, my roommate and best buddy. And he turned around and was like, you're a bass player. And I was like, yeah, yes, sir, And eventually I started this jam session in Atlanta that was like this very crazy scene, and all these people started coming, and we created this whole movement and down there that wasn't that greatly documented, but it was a big deal. I mean, it was so I started doing that, and then through that I met Dwayne Trucks and all these other people that I've worked with to this day for 20 years, whatever. And then Dwayne and I were playing all the time with a band called Highly Kind. It was a big band out of Alabama, so we're doing that whole circuit, all the way from essentially Nashville to Florida. It was all bars and frat parties and stuff like that. 3 or 4 nights a week. Driving basically ourselves. The gigs were meeting in Gaston, Alabama, at the Van with Albert Simpson. And Dwayne ended up getting the gig with Bruce. And then eventually, Bruce started coming to my gigs at this restaurant I used to do at Bojanic in Decatur, which was this amazing dude named Garv and his sister Urshna. They were such huge music fans. And Garv was a great percussionist. But they would book music at this place. It would be the heaviest. It'd be like Oliver Wood would play with Ike Stubblefield, and it was just like a scene, in this Indian restaurant. It was amazing food. So I started doing Wednesdays there. And then Bruce came in and saw me and Dwayne, and he basically, I got a phone call randomly. It was like, I'm going to make you an offer. If you say no, I have to kill you. and that's when it started with Bruce. But I was with Bruce for almost 4 years with Dwayne and Nick Johnson.
What did you learn from him?
I learned a lot of what to do and what not to do. It was, looking back on it, the Colonel was definitely a cult. And his name gets brought up every day. It's still, I talk about Bruce nonstop. It's the big thing I learned about through Bruce is how to navigate through all this shit a lot easier. And I think that me and O'Teal and Dwayne and Jimmy and Sipe, and there's this great list of guys that came out of the camp that were quote unquote successful, but the casualties outnumber that by hundreds, I bet.
How so? Why is that?
Because he would get in your head. He would force you to like really question why you're going to put yourself through this shit.
What were some of his methods? How would he do that?
For instance, the first day in the van, I'm driving, and Bruce used to sit in the passenger side, somehow with his legs straight up in a 15-passenger van. Like, to this day, I don't know how he did it, but his legs would be completely straight with his feet up in the air, sitting there.
Like on the ceiling?
No. It would be. I don't know how he did it. He would put his hand up in the window like this, and he would sit there like that, just chomping on smart popcorn or whatever all day and drinking a big fountain Diet Coke. And he would, one day, first day, he looks at me, I'm driving. Why are you doing this to yourself, Scott? There's no real money, hard to maintain relationships. The best usually get recognized. And my reaction was, the only thing I know how to do, I have to do it. And that's kind of the right answer, because, like we talked about earlier, if you're coming into this business thinking, I need to get accolades, I need to get chicks, I got to get drugs, you're going to last.
Money, fame.
It doesn't last. And that's the biggest thing he taught everybody that would listen. And some of his methods was abusive, like of teaching. It was definitely not. Because my wife, when she asked me all these stories, she's like, "That sounds pretty abusive." I was like, "It was." He basically was like, it's like being a band. Your band leader was Sun Ra, Zappa, Howlin' Wolf, and Mark Twain was your band leader.
Very eccentric.
And he was also psychic, and he would just scan your ass and like know exactly what you're doing and thinking, and it was just pretty wild stuff.
So talk a little bit more. How was he psychic?
His whole big thing that people talk about was he could guess your birthday when he met you.
Did you see him actually do that?
Oh, I see him for a minute. His thing was we would always have to go to a Ruby Tuesdays for lunch, which is. Because he had the salad buffet. Oh, it's the best deal in town. And waitress would come up. You go, April 17th, 1990. You go, that's my birthday. How'd you know that? It was, and there's so, God, the stories. He, I don't know if I've even said this on air before. But when I was getting married to my ex-wife, I used to have lunch with Bruce 3 days a week at least. That was the thing, because he was a man about town. He would have 4 or 5 lunch meetings a day with always different people. And we're at the Cab Farmers Market, and just me and him, and we're eating. And he looks at me and goes, "Scott, it won't last a year and a half." And I'm like, "What won't last a year and a half?" "Your marriage." And I got really pissed off about it, you know. And he went, "Only way it's going to work for you is if you get a Virgo from Alabama." And I stormed out of there. I was like, "Man, I'm not listening to this." Literally, that marriage lasted, I mean, it was the week he died, which is May 1st, so close. A year and 5 months.
Damn.
And then the love of my life, Kara Kirkland, is a Virgo from Alabama. You know, I mean, it's the depth of, and to this day, it was like, people say he was an alien. Some people say he was a time traveler. But he would predict things all the time. Like his first nickname for me was essentially New York. There's New York. That's New York quality. What are you talking about? He knew I was going to have to go to New York, you know. And when I started playing in New York, he was still alive. And he would tell me, he's like, "Yeah."
So this is pre you moving to New York.
Oh my God, this is me as a baby where I can barely afford $270 a month rent, you know. And I was like, "What are you talking about?" You know. God, what else? I mean, I've seen him, you know, his big vice is he never drank or did drugs. And he forbidden you from doing them. It's very Zappa-esque. Like if he caught you with a beer, he sent you home on a Greyhound before a show, or smoking pot or whatever. But his big vices were food and gambling, you know. And I've been in the track with him where I seen him hit super trifectas, which that means you're guessing the entire race. Every number, getting it right. What are the chances of that? And even with a 2-cent bet, he gets paid $13,000 because it's impossible to do that. You know, and I saw him do it multiple times. Like, how do you do something like that? You predict the entire outcome of a race from the first to last place.
Well, he sounds like he was some kind of antenna.
Yes, he had a massive antenna.
Just feeding whatever the information is from the universe that it's sending him.
Yeah, he had these eyes that would stare through you. It was horrifying. You know, it was, when I first met him, I was scared to death because he could see everything.
He was scanning you.
Oh my God, dude! It was. I mean, he would. The first time, I just remember this. The first time in my head, I was like, I got to quit this band because at the time, me and Dwayne were trying to do our own thing. And Bruce would never fire you. He would do things where you have to quit or you just would go insane. He was starting to kind of pull this on Dwayne and I, you know. And this gig, he basically had it where we were playing so low that people couldn't hear us. So we're playing these fucking dumpy bars in Florida. So we're in Destin at the Funky Blue Shack, packed full of just drunks. And I can't even hear what we're playing because we were playing so low and people were talking. So I just stepped on the volume pedal and the whole place went nuts. And Bruce claimed, "Oh, so you found the flow tonight." But that gig, before I did that, and the first time in my mind I said, "I gotta quit," I swear to God, he looks at me and was like right when I thought it. Like he knew at that moment that it was kind of.
We got a spider here.
There he is. What kind of spider is it?
I don't know. Or maybe it's a fly.
Yeah, it's a fly.
Oh, looks like a spider. Dude, that's fucking crazy.
Yeah, I mean, in the shit with O'Teal, we call him O'Teal from Egypt. You know, that O'Teal, O'Teal had no idea how heavy Egyptian ancestry he had. You know, I mean, it's and another thing about Bruce too is he would somehow find the best thing about you and push it. He had these moments where when you're the golden child, that means he was pushing you up. And then he would test you. Like one day he would just hit the button, you'd just fall down 20 stories.
It's kind of like that movie Whiplash. Have you seen that?
Yeah, it's not really though.
Okay.
Because it wasn't like Whiplash was like severe psychological, narcissistic, crazy shit. Bruce, it was more like, I'm going to build you up and see how you take it.
See if you get a big head about it? Yeah.
And then I'm going to drop the fucking bomb on you and see how you take that. And that's where I say the casualties come in. Because, the only other person to, like after me and Nick and Dwayne, and then, he fired Nick Johnson twice and got other guys, but the Feral Gov't was our project with Bruce. After that, there was not really a set band again because he was using side guys and forming stuff, and they'd leave. And the only other person to really do the time at that point was Darren Stanley. And Darren Stanley is this incredible drummer in Atlanta that plays in one of my solo projects called Wax Paper. And he was my house drummer for years at the Jam anyway. But during that era, it was just Bruce was chopping people's heads off because they would get to that golden calf thing and then just get dropped. And they would be like they couldn't take it or they would quit, And that's what I'm saying about the casualties because everybody can talk about like ARU, which is one of the greatest bands ever assembled of any genre of all time, right? But you don't talk about the hundreds of other people that were in Bruce's band. You don't even know who they are. And some people quit completely. Like he got them so bad psychologically about getting in their own heads they couldn't take it and just stopped doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, I guess that's one method of separating the wheat from the chaff. And it's like the other thing I feel like about being a sideman and being brought in on a gig, you don't really know, even if it's an artist gig, like, what is that musical director going to be like?
Right.
What is the artist going to be like? Is the artist also the musical director? Are they the one that are giving cues on stage? So it's when you're brought into something new, you're trying to determine what the workflow is, what the hierarchy is, because it exists for better or worse. There's a hierarchy.
Oh, of course. I think that's some Bruce shit too. I mean, I like personally, I'm not scared to ask questions, and I would consider myself like a guitar player's bass player at this point because I've worked with all these great dudes, and I ask them, what do you want under you? And I think a lot of younger, going off of the Bruce topic, but a lot of younger musicians they just ask, like, ask the drummer, like, what do you prefer? Doesn't mean you have to do it, because look, the artist, at the end of the day, a lot of times they're checked out doing their own shit. So
they're just trying to look and sound good.
I don't talk to them.
Yeah.
Unless it's about cool stuff.
Yeah.
But not, but with Warren, it was like, what do you prefer? Well, I like it to think of you're soloing and I'm soloing at the same time. Perfect. Off for the races. We're going Woody. We're going pure Woody again. Alan Woody's back. That idea of improvising, rock improvisation, but then with Jimmy Herring, it was like Jimmy liked a lot of subtle things. So does Warren. I mean, it's not like I'm saying like, yeah, just fucking shit all over everything and be fine. No, but
you got to be tasteful.
You got to be tasteful, but you have to know when to go up the neck, basically, and that's the Allman Brothers thing. It's very important. I mean, it's such a it's and it's so funny now being associated with that scene for as long as I have, and that's one of the judgiest things I am when I see guys playing that music as the bass parts, because it's like, you got Barry Oakley was basically like Jack Bruce and Jimmy Garrison, that they were all wanting to be jazzers. They were like, I tell people all the time, it's like, don't necessarily study Barry or Alan.
Study their influences.
Study their influences, and then take what they did in certain scenarios, but don't sit there and be like, well, I'm studying Barry Oakley so I can play in the Arm Brothers. No, it's like study who they were into, and then take what they did, because it's like, and I think it's really interesting to hear certain guys, how they adapt it, and when I see guys playing like whipping posts with their fingers, stop, play with a pick.
Respect.
Come on. Like, it's like, majority of those tunes were with a pick. Just man up, woman up, whatever you are, up, and play with the pick.
Yeah.
Stop being weird.
I like playing with a pick. I talked with Nick Mofshawn about this on the podcast, and he said he didn't know that there's bass players who shame you for using a pick. And I'm like, oh, yeah, dude. There's a lot of bass players.
I see it every day online.
Yeah.
Well, then you look at what they're doing, you're like, oh, well, go back to what the hell you're doing.
Well, it's like some of the shit, like even Paul McCartney, what he played, it's like the only way possible to play some of that stuff is with a pick. Like Baby You're a Rich Man, you can only get that sound from playing with a pick.
Bro, and when I was doing the Wayne Krantz gig all the time, like the pick is an arsenal for creativity where you're going to play things you're not going to play with your fingers.
Totally.
And that's the way you have to look at it.
Yeah.
That's like people who are totally against extended range basses. Personally, like, I don't own a 6-string. I would buy one. I used to play a 6-string a lot when I was younger. I'm not going to judge somebody for being extended range, because now we're in a weird. Internet has produced so many armchair quarterbacks that now you have extended range guys who make fun of the 4-string guys. You have the 4-string guys making fun of extended range. You have the pick guys making fun of the only finger. It's this whole weird. You don't have to pick a side. It's stupid.
Yeah.
If you're a musician, take all the tools you can, or you're going to be left behind.
Well, the way I see it, it's like artists using different kind of colors and paintbrushes.
Amen.
That what will bring this song to life?
Right.
That's what matters.
That's it.
Talk to me a little bit about your animal sanctuary.
Yeah, this is the most incredible thing. My wife, Kara Kirkland, we got, during the pandemic, we were staying at our friend Heather and Chris Speeds' house in Fairhope, Alabama, and their Winnebago. Because we were living in New Orleans, it was getting crazy down there, and I was like, let's get out of here, let's go live on the country. And that was our first taste of getting a baby possum. It ended up being Kenny Rogers the possum, who lived with us. But my wife has always been like Ace Ventura. When I met her, the first day I saw her, when I met her, she had a rat in her shoulder, a pet rat, Dolly Parton. And that's why I approached her. I was like, who the fuck are you? You're this beautiful.
A Virgo from Alabama.
I didn't know at the time, but you're this beautiful, tall, blonde girl with a rat in her shoulder in Brooklyn. And from there, it's like it got more and more serious. She started really getting into the program and like getting all the right licensing, getting her to be an actual rehabber. Getting all the right documents, learning everything, going to conferences, and we were doing this in Brooklyn in our apartment, and eventually. The main, we obtained this, or she obtained this tiny little rooster on a subway sign that was there, and it was named Lo Mein, the rooster. And when Lo Mein came in our life, we realized, you know what? Let's get the fuck out of New York. Let's get down south again and start to really do this. And we found the perfect place in Old Hickory, and she operates under Vermin Sanctuary. Now we have all these amazing volunteers that come in and work with animals, and it's a 24-hour job for her because it's just to feed and make sure they're staying alive. But the amount of awareness and she's bringing to the community has been pretty amazing to help with these critters that are misfits. Possums, raccoons, groundhogs, skunks. It's an amazing scene at the house. It's just pure love in animals. It's definitely something we're both passionate about. But yeah, so Vermin Sanctuary, check us out.
Is there an Instagram for it?
Oh yeah,
What is the Instagram?
the Vermin Sanctuary.
Oh, okay, perfect.
And you can sign up to volunteer, go to the website, and it's just so therapeutic because it's like imagine sitting there and getting taught how to feed a baby raccoon, bottle feed it, or feeding baby possums, it's pretty amazing over there, and it's one thing about Nashville that I was not aware about moving here was that there's such an amazing, strong scene of women that live here. It's incredible. Like always, amazing women come over that are all like just total badasses, and it's just kind of the underlining scene in Nashville is ran by these badass women. So seeing that in real time has been very inspiring too.
There's a lot of different personalities
It's amazing.
that live here.
It's amazing.
It's a special place.
It is. I totally agree. I had no idea about it. But the kindness people show here and the musicians and like how it's not competitive. There's always gonna be a little bit of that, but it's so not like the East Coast. I first started moving here. Me and Kara first started moving here. We still had the New York mindset of like kind of being a little. You gotta keep your guard up a little bit, and that went away after like a month for both.
Yeah, everybody here's so friendly.
Yeah, pretty amazing.
Welcoming. And what's really cool, one of the things that I love is just meeting tourists because they're so fucking excited to be in Nashville, dude.
Yeah.
They're so excited to be here. They've heard about it. Maybe they've been here before, or they've had a friend that has visited. And what everybody says is like, I didn't realize it was going to be cool. Like, there's the impression of Nashville on the surface, which is the honky-tonk Disney World.
Sure.
Like, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's a great thing. It gives a lot of musicians opportunities to feed themselves. There's a lot of ways. It's very much a gig economy in multiple ways.
It is.
Between music, you can do Uber, you can do Lyft, do all these different things. But there's one of the things about Nashville is it's very transient too. There's a lot of people that come and go. Like I have friends now all over the U.S. who had Nashville stints. It's like every city in the U.S. I have friends in now.
Oh yeah, it's totally that. It's just interesting being, because my time in Atlanta, my time in New York, my time in New Orleans, it's New Orleans is just probably my favorite place on earth. It's just such a magical place.
Are you a big Meters fan?
Oh my God! George Porter. I've been lucky. George has made major impacts in my life, and he's, I could say I'm really close with George and Denise, his partner, and that was the one thing about when I lived there. When everything opened back up, my wife and I were just like, if she went every week, but if I was in town every Monday at the Leap, I'm seeing George. Because back to the little bass talk, the instrument's so young. George is an OG. So it'd be like the equivalent of us as guitar players seeing Charlie Christian or Django. And these guys are still alive. We're so lucky that electric bass is so young that the Chucks are here. George is here. Bob Glabb and Lee Scalar and these guys that were, and we've lost a lot of the OGs, but they're still around though.
Carol Kay, she's still around.
She's still around. It's like seeing Django,
Wild.
So we gotta take care of them.
Tell me a little bit about some of the other your own projects that you're working on.
I got a lot going on with that right now. This week I have this project called Resonant Paths, and it started with this guy Ryan Klattner and I. Ryan Klattner is like my I do everything I can with him. He's a genius guitar player that he's one of my best buddies, and we've done a lot of pre-stuff together, and I played some of his stuff, and so this is my first project hiring him as essentially a sideman, and it's this guy Greg Osby from the Philly area. That Greg is a huge influence on me. Him and Gary Thomas, their work they did in the 80s and 90s, and currently I think Greg is a national treasure I mean, he's one of the greatest composers and musicians in the world. And then we, at the time in New York, we had different drummers doing, and the last drummer was Kenny Kowalski, who's this phenomenal drummer. But now this time around, I'm booking it in Nashville, playing Underdog on this upcoming Thursday.
Great venue.
I love that place. I got a residency there, but I got Isaac Eady coming up from New Orleans, and Isaac is the drummer for Tedeschi Trucks, but I've known Isaac for a very long time. So it's all idea is taking these really eclectic people and playing, 70% improvised parts over structure. And we're doing Atlanta at Eddie Zach on this Saturday. I got that. I had a label in New York called 29th Street Editions. So that the label kind of folded, and now I have 7 of these records got to put out. I have a trio record on that I'm going to put out with Ryan Klattner again, a guitar, and Matt Chamberlain, this incredible drummer from the West Coast, under my own name. And then I have just a lot of stuff I have to put out this year. And then let's see, the Wednesday Night Titans, we're on kind of hiatus right now. We'll be back. That means Zach Danziger doing Zach's a genius. And the concept is that we take old pro wrestling footage from the 70s, write songs, and it's behind it's insane. I mean, it's the most work I've ever seen a human being do for a project. What Zach does with that. I mean, it's programming songs and real time improvising as well with a screen with footage. So that's happening. King Baby, this project I've had for years, we're getting back up and running again. That's me and Rick Lawler and Martin Rodabaugh and Matt Slocum, all incredible dudes. And so that's kind of the concentration now. Just getting all my stuff out there because it's all ready to rock. But just finding the ways to do it.
Oh yeah, release is a whole other thing besides the making of something.
Bro.
How can people find you?
Best place is my Instagram, is the King's Eye. My website is easily updated. It's kevinscottmusic.com. I'm going to try to do that more, but I think people are more concerned with Instagram, really. That has pretty much everything I do on there.
Awesome. Dude, thank you so much for coming
Thanks
on.
for having me. What a great time, man.
Keep on dreaming. See you next week.
Yeah.